Hello and welcome to the Racial Equity Webinar Series. I'm Kinkini Banerjee, the Coalition Relations Director at USBC.
I've been multitasking all morning. So let me just get my brain.
Miriam, I think your audio is on.
Well, hello.
Yeah, I mean, it really just says, do you have a minute to chat?
Miriam, can you please mute your line? Thank you. Miriam Rodriguez, our Coalition Relations Coordinator, and I will be the webinar moderators for this session. We are so glad to have you join us for this important session today. As you know, the USBC hosts this bi-monthly webinar series with funding support from the W.K. Kellogg Foundation. And the purpose of this series is to increase our collective understanding about the principles of social and racial justice, equity and inclusion, and strengthen our collective capacity to implement policies and practices that improve access, dignity, equity, and justice for all. Our webinars are designed for participants at various levels and knowledge to apply the concepts and principles of equity. And we hope that these sessions bring ideas and inspiration to all of us to collaborate, co-design, so that we can have more impactful strategies, programs, policies, and practices. I hope you're a member of a racial equity learning community. This learning community is a forum to discuss issues that go beyond the webinar sessions or the networking sessions that we have. We have designed these to share resources, to promote dialogue, and to foster continuous learning in the reproductive health and justice field. So if you're not part of this, the racial equity learning community, please consider joining today. So as we have, like I said, we have the webinars on odd-numbered months. We have a discussion forum. We have a file library with a lot of selected general readings as well as readings related to the theme of our webinars. And occasionally, we also do blog posts and highlight organizations and individuals working in the field or call to action. So if you are not already a part of our racial equity learning community, you can find it on our website, www.usbreastfeeding.org/equity-community, or if that's too hard to remember, you can go to our website and then click on News and Info and scroll down in the drop-down menu that opens up, and you'll see learning communities, and you'll see we have more than 20 learning communities related to the different topic areas of the Surgeon General's call to action. And then we also have the racial equity learning community, which is one of our most vibrant ones. All of our webinar sessions are recorded, and we know that many who are registered are not able to attend a live session, so we post the recordings and any handouts as well as the slides on the public page, the equity page, as well as our public archives. A few housekeeping. Since we have a large number of attendees, the attendees are in listen-only mode, which means that you can hear us, but we can't hear you. So we hope to make this as interactive as possible, given the format that we have. So please submit your comments and questions at any time during the webinar session, and you can type them in the question box. If you raise your hand, we can also unmute your line during the Q&A session. So to type your questions, you'll see a control panel on the right of the screen. If you don't see it, it might be minimized. So click on that orange tab with the white arrow, and it'll the control panel will pop out. And right under the audio section, you'll see a tab for questions. Click on that, and it'll open up a box for you to type in. We will be monitoring the chat and the questions and answering them as some of them as they come up, but I will also be facilitating. We'll have Q&A at the end of the session. So we'll have about 15 to 20 minutes for Q&A, so I'll pass them on to our speakers during that time. During the session, if you have audio problems or any other technical issues, please email office@breastfeeding.org, and our staff should be able to help you. And that brings me to today's topic, breastfeeding culture and in Hispanic mothers in the U.S. This month, as you might know, is Hispanic Heritage Month that we celebrate from September 15 to October 15. Our equity series has brought us webinar and sessions and speakers and experts on Latino health, Hispanic health throughout the year. But during this month, we make a very special emphasis to lift up organizations or individuals and from the community who are working for systems level changes. And we are so thrilled today to bring the National Association of Hispanic Nurses to highlight the work that they do. This is a nation's leading professional society for Latino nurses, and with a growing membership with many chapters, more than 40 chapters, the NAN represents the voices of Latino nurses in our country. So it is devoted to promoting safe, quality healthcare delivery to Latino communities and individuals. So today's session has a broader overview. So today we are going to hear a little bit about what NAN does and how they are. This organization is connecting culturally competent healthcare professionals to Hispanic health issues and provides a unified voices for Hispanic health issues. And then we are also going to hear about research. One of our NAN members and faculty is going to talk about breastfeeding in Latino communities. So I am delighted to introduce our speakers today. Cresta, our first speaker is Cresta Archuleta, who's the Executive Director of the National Association of Hispanic Nurses. Before joining NAN, Cresta worked as Director of Strategic Partnerships with the Hispanic Communications Network, where she carried project management duties for the National Institutes of Health Sciences Education Partnership Award. And as you can see from this gorgeous picture, Cresta is a new mom, and her son Cole is now 5 months old. As Cresta juggles her many roles, that of being a new parent, a leader, and in building the capacity of her organization, her own experiences and insights through the continuum of pregnancy, birth, and postpartum strengthen her commitment as well as her organization's commitment to maternal and child health issues. Cresta will be followed by Dr. Ana Maria Linares, who is a member of NAN and the Associate Professor, College of Nursing at the University of Kentucky. We are so thrilled and excited to have Dr. Linares with us today. She will be talking about her research as well as her vantage as a practitioner and teacher. So I'm going to turn it over to Cresta first.
Thank you so much for the introduction, and we are so excited to be presenting with you. This is certainly an important topic for us, and I will be brief with my introduction of NAN so that we can get to the heart of the presentation. The National Association of Hispanic Nurses was founded in the late 1970s, and we are currently the only professional association for Hispanic nurses in the United States, which we estimate to be at around 187,000 in number.
Cresta, sorry, this is Kini. We don't see your screen yet. Would you be able to show your screen, please?
Oh, certainly. Great, thank you, everyone. So NON has existed since the late 1970s. We have 2,000 members, and again, so as I was giving some stats, we represent in voice and action the estimated 180,000 plus nurses in the United States. We have about 2,000 members, so certainly a way to go in terms of growing membership. But I'll talk to you today about some of our important initiatives. Our purpose is to celebrate the culture, caring, and spirit of Hispanic nurses, who are the leading voice of health in our communities. We really take seriously the position of trust that nurses hold, and this picture is from our recent annual conference in Cleveland, Ohio. NON's first mission is to provide our members with leadership opportunities at many levels, whether they're student members or whether they are our emeritus members. We want to ensure that they have leadership opportunities in their community, personal leadership, leadership in their organization, and leadership in the nation. We work to expand professional opportunities for nurses, and finally, educational opportunities through the form of scholarship, grant awards, and other advice and networking and mentorship opportunities. NON's second mission is to advance the health of Hispanic communities, and we do that through a variety of objectives. We provide a forum for nurses to analyze and evaluate the healthcare needs of the Hispanic community. We promote safety and quality of healthcare delivery services to our Hispanic community, and we do use the terms Hispanic, Latino, Latinx terms interchangeably. Through our grant and partnership and chapter work, we work to identify barriers in the implementation and delivery of health services to Hispanic consumers, and we work very hard to recommend appropriate solutions to local, state, and federal agencies. We do that chiefly through our Policy and Advocacy Committee, who then disseminates toolkits, advocacy work, and other resources to our chapters and members. Some benefits of being a member are very typical of society benefits, but it provides a connection to a network of Hispanic healthcare professionals. It gives nurses the chance to serve in leadership positions on NON's board and committees, and as well as other boards and committees with some of our strategic partners. And it also offers an opportunity to disseminate research findings and research through our journal called Hispanic Healthcare International. There are a variety of benefits to belong at the chapter level. You can find more information about that on our website, nahnet.org. And you don't have to be a nurse to belong to the National Association of Hispanic Nurses. We do offer general membership for licensed nurses, but if you are an affiliate or a corporate member or a nursing affiliate and have an interest in working with Hispanic communities and Hispanic healthcare issues, we welcome you to explore the work that we do. I mentioned a bit about our policy and advocacy. Our committee upholds NON's mission and advocates for integration with related public policy issues. We develop strategies that are not only reactive, but proactive as well, in keeping up with the legislative landscape, as well as working on issues that we know are important to overcoming healthcare disparities. One thing to mention, we're working hard on statements, and we know that there's a lot happening quickly this week in the sense of what's happening across some governmental agencies. You can find more information on our website, but NON does not support the current policy of separating children from their families as they seek to enter the United States without documentation. So we will be very vocal about issues such as that, and you can expect to see more on our website about that in the very near future. Some of the core of the work that we do in a way that the community can interact with NON through a couple of conferences that we have. We have an upcoming Latino Leadership Institute in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and then our annual conference takes place every mid to late July, and the next event will be held at the Peppermill Resort in Reno Tahoe, Nevada. I did mention a bit about the grant programs and partnerships. We work at the federal level and work as well with foundation funding. We currently have a few programs that you can see listed. One important one that we have is working with NIH All of Us to recruit more Hispanics into research. There were 3 funding rounds that we're just entering into that, so we think that's a really important one for us as well. You're welcome to contact us. Our president is Dr. Norma Cuellar. She's a full professor at the University of Alabama, Tuscaloosa, and I have here listed my contact information as well as our website, and just wanted to thank you for allowing us to present some information about the National Association of Hispanic Nurses. And with that, I would like to introduce our presenter, Ana Maria Linares, DNS, RN, IBCLC, and also a member of NAN. Ana Maria Linares graduated and received her degree in midwifery from the University of Chile. She earned a Doctor of Nursing Science degree in 2006 from the University of Nuevo León in Monterrey, Mexico. She obtained her RN license in Kentucky in 2009 and the credential as International Board Certified Lactation Consultant in 2012. She joined the faculty at the University of Kentucky in 2009, where she is currently an associate professor. Dr. Linares has a program of research on health disparities with an emphasis on the promotion of breastfeeding that has been funded by intramural and extramural grant awards. She's currently conducting several studies on breastfeeding in Kentucky, including a randomized controlled trial among Hispanic women and their family support person to assess the effectiveness of an innovative and community-based family-centered intervention that seeks to enhance exclusive breastfeeding. Dr. Linares has been awarded the Breastfeeding Champion Award from the Breastfeeding Improvement Network Kentucky Lactation in 2014, and the Terry Jo Curtis 2016 Award by the U.S. Breastfeeding Consultants Association. She's recently received a Teaching and Research Award from the Fulbright Scholars Program that will take her to Peru in the spring of 2019, where she will implement a study to understand determinants of anemia in children and the association with infant feeding practices. And with that, I turn the presentation over to Dr. Linares.
Thank you. Thank you, Krista, for that introduction. It was really nice. I'm really happy and thank you for this invitation to share with all of you some of the knowledge that I have about Hispanics, breastfeeding and Hispanics. Let's see if it is work. Okay, I need to say one of the declaration of conflict of interest is that I don't have any conflict of interest with the authorship and publication that I'm going to share in this presentation. So these are the objectives, as you probably got it from USBC, so probably I don't need to read it, but just to remind you that we're gonna try to explain what are the racial and ethnic disparities in breastfeeding related with Hispanics that live in USA. And also we're going to talk about the cultural issues associated with initiation, how they choose Hispanic, how they choose how they're gonna feed their infants, and also identify some health risk factors associated with suboptimal breastfeeding in Hispanics. We will also discuss some potential interventions. So before to start with the specific topic of breastfeeding, I would like to probably everybody understand a little bit about how are Hispanics in the USA. So, for example, we know that Hispanics makes about 80% of the total population. If you see this graphic, you can see that right now in 2015, this is based in the 2015 census, was around 56.5 million Hispanics were living in the USA. And we know that it's the faster growing minority because fertility rate is really high in Hispanics compared with no-Hispanics white. And most of the nation growth, in fact, was about 50%, 56% of the nation growth was between 2000 and 2010 due to Hispanics. We also know that of those mothers that are delivering babies that are Hispanics, about 52% are born out of the country. So that means that those infants are born from immigrants, for mothers that are immigrants. It is expected that by 2015, about 30% of the population living in the United States is going to be Hispanic. So that means about 1 of every 4 people in the USA is going to be Hispanic by 2015. So the U.S., the Hispanic population have been grown from 1970, then we were only 9.6 million to 2016 about 58 million. So anyway, we know that this increasing have been declining a little bit during the last years because especially immigration had been slowed down during the last 5 to 10 years. We also need to understand that Hispanic population, we have two types of Hispanic population, or 2 groups. One is the one that had been born in the USA, and other group that are foreign born. From this, we know that by 2015, about 35% of the population of Hispanics in the USA were born out of the country, or in other words, were immigrants. And about 65% of the population that were living were born in the United States. So why this is important? Because we know that, for example, this population that is born in the United States are younger compared with the population that are born out of the country. So here we have the average group age is 18 years old compared with this group that is about 42 years old. So it's a huge difference. Later also we are going to see some difference in the health indicators of these 2 Hispanic population groups. One important thing also to understand about Hispanic population in the USA is that they come from different parts of Latin America, and also can be included Spain. As Cresta was explaining, sometimes we use the word Hispanic, sometimes we use the word Latino. However, there's no have been a lot of conversation about which word is more appropriate. Hispanics are most of the country that speak Spanish, so if we include that word, sometimes we need to live apart Brazil, people that coming from Brazil. And Latino is more related with people that live in Latin America, and that means from all the countries from Central America to South America, but we live out of this group, people that come sometimes from Spain. So that's the reason why we haven't been able to define which word is much better to use. So I'm going to, for the sake of this presentation, we're going to use both words probably interchangeable. So one of the things that is important to understand about the Hispanic population also is not only that some of them are born out of the country and some of them are not born, in the country, in the USA. We also need to know that about 63% of the Hispanic population living in the United States are their heritage, or they are descendant, or they are from Mexico. And only the rest, close to 40%, come from all the other countries. There are many other countries in South America. Here we have, for example, a list of the first 6, I would say, countries that have the highest rate of population of Hispanic population in the United States. So about 63% is a huge number are from Mexico, or they are the heritage is from Mexico. We have about 9.5 from Puerto Rico, El Salvador, Cuba, Dominican Republic, Guatemala, and Colombia. They all also have more than 1 million people living in United States. But we know that there are more than close to 28 countries that belong to Hispanic heritage or Latinos. And each of those countries are going to have different cultures and different traditions that sometimes as a health provider, we need to deal with those differences. We can put all the Hispanic population together. They have some particular things that are different, and we need to, that's the reason why when we are talking with people that are Hispanic, we need to identify what are their origin, or if they have, they're coming from a different country. For example, we have countries like in South America, like Argentina, Chile, or Ecuador, Bolivia, that have the completely different traditions compared with people that is coming, for example, from Central America or North America, like Mexico. Even for the sake of doing intervention, sometimes we can get together a group of people from Mexico, El Salvador, or Guatemala, because they kind of share more their traditions. But if we put people from Cuba or from people from Chile or Argentina, they are completely different, and it's going to be difficult to work with those groups, even though they all speak Spanish. So those are important considerations. Hispanics live all over the United States. Most we know that are concentrated in the West Coast. However, also Florida has a high number of Hispanic population. Here are the 10 states that are that is the faster growing population of Hispanic. Georgia has have been one of the fastest growing population, with almost doubling the amount of people that are Hispanic or Latino in that state. Some of the demographic characteristics that we need also to understand about Hispanics is, for example, the language fluency. Probably language can be one of the biggest barriers for Hispanics. We know that about 73% of Hispanics, they speak a language other than English at their home, because they are keeping the Spanish language most of the time at their home. We also know that about 31% state that they are not fluent in English, and those are more related with obvious immigrants. About educational, we know that about 66 have a high school diploma. This is, if we compare this with no Hispanic white, we have about 92% are gonna get a high school diploma versus only 66 in the Hispanic population. Now, if we divided this the Hispanic population and we compare, we're going to notice that also Mexican or people from Central America, they are less likely to be able to have high school diploma compared with immigrants or people that are coming from countries in South America. They are more likely to have some type of education or even a bachelor degree. 14.8% of the in general of Hispanic population based in the census 2015 have a bachelor degree or higher, and but this is really low compared with the about or close to 35% of the non-Hispanic white. Economics, the average median household income for Hispanics, the one that work full time, is about $44,000. This is also low compared with the non-Hispanic white, that is about 62%. I mean, I'm sorry, 62,000. We know that about 22.6% of Hispanic live at the poverty level. This is also high compared with 10.4% of the non-Hispanic white living in poverty only. Only 20.5% are working of Hispanics are working in professional occupation versus about 45% of the non-Hispanic white. Now, if we compare also the insurance coverage, it is significant to know that Hispanics have the highest uninsurance rate of any racial or ethnic group within the United States. The census reported that 47% of Hispanics have private insurance coverage. Among some Hispanic subgroup, we noticed that Mexican, they only 44% report to have insurance. 52% of the Puerto Rican people, they reported to have some type of insurance. Other places or subgroup, we noticed that they don't have a cover for many of them. They don't have a cover also for insurance. We noticed that in 2015 also that about 20% of the Hispanic population didn't have any coverage at all. So when the woman is pregnant, she's gonna go because she knows that she can probably apply for some type of insurance or Medicaid, and she's gonna be able to go. So that is the time when we can see them and we are able to give some type of intervention. Related with health issues in Hispanics, we know that, like I said, that this is a population that is growing really fast because the fertility rate is about 2%, 2.1, compared with 1.2 only that is in non-Hispanic white. So it is expected by 2035 that it's going to be 1 of every 4 in United States are going to be Hispanic. Hispanic death rate is lower than the white. However, we know that Hispanics are about 50% more likely to die from diabetes or other liver diseases than non-Hispanic white. In fact, about 2 of every 5 deaths in Hispanics are related with diseases, heart diseases or cancer that are associated with this population. Now, we know also that obesity is a huge problem with Hispanic. Hispanics are the highest, have one of the highest rate of obesity, with about 42% of the population being obese, compared with only 34.6% of the non-Hispanic white. We notice also that women tend to be more obese than men. So this is really important to consider when we are looking and seeing this population. Mexico, now, if we divide these 2 subgroups that are related with being born in the USA or not being born or coming from a foreign country, we notice that being born in the USA and being Hispanic is more risky than not being born here. So cancer is really higher, it's almost double. Heart diseases is also. Look at the risk of obesity is really increasing a lot when people are Hispanic and born in the USA. And also cigarette smoking. So what is showing this to us is that this population come to United States, and when the second generation, the one that is born here, is going to probably assimilate to the culture, to the habits of the type of food and things like that are going to increase the risk of having these many diseases. So now we're going to focus a little more with what happened with breastfeeding. Hispanic women who immigrate to the U.S. bring with them cultural traditions and healthcare practice from their native countries that are protective behaviors, probably we can say. One of those is the culture of exclusive breastfeeding. It's not just breastfeeding, it's exclusive breastfeeding. Mothers that are living in South America or in Central America, especially if they have conditions, they are low, they have low income, they want to exclusively breastfeed their baby as a way to save money, as a way to protect their children from diseases. So most of the time they are going to come to the United States. If they get pregnant here and they deliver a baby, they are going to have a high intention to breastfeed their babies. In a study that I ran with my colleagues here, we noticed that the intention to breastfeed was really high in most of the mothers that we interviewed during prenatal care. And we noticed also that those women that have a higher intention to breastfeed were almost twice likely to initiate breastfeeding during hospital stay, and also doing it exclusive breastfeeding, not only initiating, but also trying to do exclusive breastfeeding. However, we noticed that this relation started decreasing by the 4 months, because even that intention was a predictor of initiation, and especially of initiation of exclusive breastfeeding, didn't support that this relation continue at 4 months or more. So if we look some of the rate, the national rate of exclusive breastfeeding or initiation of breastfeeding, this report from the National Immunization Survey, we noticed that Hispanics are more likely to initiate breastfeeding. So initiation is not really a big issue in Hispanic. We can know for sure that most of the mothers are going to initiate breastfeeding. However, there is an issue here, because by 6 months, that is the recommendation, we notice that exclusive breastfeeding is really low. It's even lower than white Hispanics. So there is something, a disconnection between these two things. Why a lot of mothers that are Hispanic are initiating breastfeeding, but they are not continue exclusive breastfeeding. So we know also by the same report that most of the mothers, the Hispanic mothers, are going to supplement with formula the first two days of life. So, that is the highest level almost compared with other ethnic groups. So this is going to produce what the phenomenon that is known more as las dos cosas. So that means that the woman is requesting, it wants to breastfeed, but at the same time she wants to formula feed. In the same study that I ran, I noticed that we found that almost 95% of the women started breastfeeding during hospitalization. However, only 50% of the women were exclusive breastfeeding. The 45% requested formula supplementation during hospital stay. And even then at discharge, most of the women were breastfeeding. We noticed that we follow these women for 4 months. By the 4 months, look at how increased the formula, exclusive formula and formula supplementation with breastfeeding continue almost the same, decreasing a little bit, but exclusive breastfeeding went from almost 50% to only 21% in this specific group. So the culture of exclusive breastfeeding that women bring from their origin countries changed completely here. And if we try to understand the reason, there are many reasons that we are going to discuss a little bit today. Seem like that most of the immigrants bring this culture of exclusive breastfeeding, but over there in their countries, that is the only option that they have. We understand that when they come here, they feel like a mixed feeding is considerable, acceptable, and even desirable, and is not viewed as a harmful things. Hispanic mothers, they want to breastfeed, but at the same time provide formula. One of the biggest issues why Hispanics come to United States is because they want to work. So that is the huge motivation. So if they come here, if they have a baby, but they are going to work, they need to provide sometimes a formula as a way to be able to work later. So some of the justification is because I'm going to go back to work. We have done also some studies, and there have been some publications that acculturation is also important in breastfeeding. Some studies have shown that women that are less acculturated are more likely to breastfeed compared than with women that are more acculturated. For example, women that are immigrants, probably they are more likely to breastfeed than women that are Hispanic women that are born in the United States. However, women are more likely to, immigrants are going to be likely to breastfeed, but no exclusive breastfeeding, because they learn from their peer when they get here in the United States that formula can be easily available sometimes. They can get it in the Woman and Infant and Children program, or combination of feeding can be possible because they can get formula from WIC, or even sometimes discontinue breastfeeding altogether after a couple months. So if we come in again with these things, they want to do las dos cosas because they justify that formula supplementation is going to be easy for them to feed their babies. They are going to be able to go back to work. Additional, they are going to perceive that chubby infant is a healthy thing. They see that their babies, that they are receiving formula, they are growing faster, and they like that. Most of the time, it is impossible for them in their original country to get formula. So now it's easy for them to access formula, and they can feed the baby with breast milk, and at the same time to formula feeding. So this is an important issue because we need to understand that women, and especially immigrants, they come here, they breastfeed their infants exclusively in their country, not because they kind of understand completely the goodness of exclusive breastfeeding, is most because there's no other option. So now we also need to understand that most of these women are going to come from countries where is a paid leave available for mothers and infants. So if we look this in South America, we notice that most of these countries are going to have a policy that protects mothers so they can stay home and they can receive pay for some weeks after delivery, so they can completely dedicate to exclusive breastfeed their babies. So at least we have people, for example, from Mexico that at least have 14 weeks of paid leaving when mothers are working. We also have countries like Chile, for example, that is almost 6 months. They have a maternity leave if they are breastfeeding their infants. And other countries like Brazil and Colombia, then they have almost 3 months of maternity leave. United States is one of the 3 countries in the world that doesn't have a maternity pay leave available for mothers. So that is something that also when mothers, Hispanic mothers, are coming to United States, they get this message that working is important, but you cannot breastfeed, because if you work, how are you going to breastfeed? Because this is also bringing another important implication. All these countries have this law that protect, or this policy that protects mothers so they can stay home, breastfeed their baby. So the use of pump to pump their milk and collect milk is not really encouraged, and most of the insurance are not going to cover in any of these countries the use of pump, because mothers are allowed to stay home, so they don't need to pump their milk. Most of them, because they're going to be at home breastfeeding their babies. So when we offer mothers that they need to pump their milk so they can continue breastfeeding their baby or giving breast milk, there are some limitations they are not used to, and they see it as a kind of difficult things to do. So it's a little complicated for them. So those are things that we need to understand from this mother. So other reasons, based in my own research with Hispanic population here in Kentucky, where I am, we also asked the mother why they stop breastfeeding or exclusive breastfeeding their babies. Most of them, they just say the perception of low milk production. About 45% of the mothers in the study that we ran initiate or they start giving las dos cosas because they perceive that the baby is not getting enough. But was not a recommendation for the pediatrician. It was not because the baby was not growing enough or gaining weight enough. So that is, and they discussed or they informed to us that they noticed that was a low milk production, and because milk was easy, formula was easy to access for them, they decided that it's better to give milk or formula to their babies. Having to work also was an important issue. They understand that they are going to need to go back to work, and they are so fear about the transition from breast to bottle. So they want to introduce bottle really early in order to avoid those problems that is going to probably damage the baby. So about 31% of the mother did these things, and was the principal factor that make them to introduce formula. Experience pain was not so high, about 11%. Another issue that is important is embarrassment about breastfeeding in public. Hispanic women are coming from cultures where breastfeeding is allowed everywhere. And most of the mothers are going to be breastfeeding in public without restriction, without even covering themselves, as it is so used to in the American culture. So they feel so embarrassing of trying to breastfeed or covering themselves. They feel like the baby's going to suffocate. So they have all these issues, and they rather, when they go to supermarkets or anywhere, they rather to feed their babies with formula. When I ask my participant, why don't you pump your milk and you give it to the baby? It comes this idea like, I don't feel familiar. I don't feel good about pumping. I don't I don't know even how to use it. It's kind of weird for me. So because they are not used to use pump, and even then, if we teach them, it is not part of the culture yet. I will say yet. Probably with the time we will be able to change them and teach them about pump. Taking medication and pediatrician was only 3% of the group received a prescription of formula. Most of the group did because they just want to introduce it. Other ethnic disparities or racial disparities in breastfeeding is that we know that the early introduction of food first can be formula, but then they're going to introduce solid food or including some ethnic food, is going to produce what we call overfeeding. And this overfeeding is going to lead to childhood obesity in the Hispanic population. In fact, have been reported that Hispanics are more likely, it's about 9.4% of the Hispanic infants and toddlers are obese, compared with only 6.6 in whites and 8.4 in black. So sometimes Hispanic mothers are going to be able to continue breastfeeding, and even when they are producing enough milk, they are going to give anyway formula, or they are going to supplement their baby with solid or ethnic food. That could be really, really dangerous. A recent report from Dr. Bartik, and she's an amazing researcher, she reported that suboptimal breastfeeding is producing increased risk in Hispanic children and also mother. She estimates, for example, that the Hispanic population are 1.4 times more likely to get otitis media compared with no Hispanic. Why? Because Hispanics are not breastfeeding their babies. The same was for gastrointestinal infection and SID, and also even respiratory tract infection. We also, she also reported that even the risk of death compared with no Hispanic white is increasing 1.5 times because no breastfeeding their children. If we look the data related with diseases attributable to less breastfeeding in the mothers, we also notice that Hispanic mothers are going to increase their risk of breast cancer, diabetes, hypertension, and cardiac disease just because they are not breastfeeding their babies. So it is important that the mothers can understand why it's important for them to breastfeed. So probably one of the most important things, we want to know how we can do an intervention. We know that there have been many interventions testing in Hispanic population to see if they can increase initiation, duration, and also exclusivity of breastfeeding. Knowing that initiation is high likely in Hispanic population, we need to focus probably in exclusive breastfeeding, initiation of exclusive breastfeeding, not only breastfeeding, a continuation of exclusive breastfeeding, and the duration at least for 6 months. Because one of the things that I learned from my studies also is that most of the mothers, even that one of the focus when they come here is to work, they want to stay home for 6 months so they are able to take care of their children, of their infants. So they are able to breastfeed their babies, but they don't do it because they have all these other limitations and fears that they are not going to be able to go back to work later. And they see formula as a good support, and even that they are going to get some specific vitamins and minerals, then you can never find those things in the breast milk. But it is also interesting that when I'm telling the mothers that formulas are modification of the cow milk, they look at me with surprise because they don't see it like that. They see it as something that is made in the labs, that is specific for human, but there's not related with cow milk. One of the biggest barriers to do interventions in the Hispanic population is the language barrier. Some cultural background different from the health provider. It is known that when the cultural background is the same, that of the patient with the health provider, there is this feeling of belonging, and also means the trust is increasing, and the language barrier obviously decrease. So many women, and probably all of you as providers are had the experience that you are going to be teaching or educating a Hispanic mother, and she's gonna is gonna start moving her head like she's understanding you, and she is giving you this sensation like, oh, she seems like she's understanding and she's gonna follow everything, but she will turn around and she will do completely different things that you are suggesting her or educating her to do. Because Hispanic population are, we always want to say yes to our health provider. Never we are confronting them or asking many questions. One of probably the best intervention is the peer counselor, the loving support that is being, most of the WIC program have been through the country, have been putting in practice. We know that they are implementing this program and have been really successful with Hispanic population. Now, these peer counselors can be just prenatal encounters, or can be hospital support, sometimes postpartum visit, or sometimes just telephone support, or sometimes have a little bit of everything. It is highly recommended the postpartum visit, because it's one of the part of this intervention that is really important for Hispanics. Most of the Hispanics are going to give some type, they have sometimes problems with transportation. And so if we are able to go to their houses, it's going to be easier for them to receive the support that they need. Professional support is also important. However, haven't been as great as a peer counselor. Lactation consultant versus nurses. There are some publications where we know that nurses probably are not as effective as the lactation consultant in the Hispanic population, and also if we compare in-person support versus telephone, also we know that in-person support is more likely to produce an effect on the mothers compared with a program that is just telephone. Now, another barrier is that Hispanic mothers are, especially if they are immigrant, they are gonna be changing their telephone number really often. So sometimes when we collect that information, then we're gonna lose it because we are not able to follow them because they changed their telephone number. So the best way probably to support them is by home visiting. There are some enhanced breastfeeding programs related with lactation consultant and peer counselor that are really good and sometimes seems to work really well with the Hispanic population. In fact, one of the last studies that I ran was a pilot study among immigrant Hispanic mothers. We focused in immigrant because we want to change the culture of this mother of las dos cosas, to change into exclusive breastfeeding. We believe that if we are able to teach this new generation of mothers that are coming from out of the country the importance of exclusive breastfeeding, they will pass this information to their future generations or to other people that is coming, instead of learning that formula is the election here. So we basically, in our findings, we developed this intervention where we use peer counselors that were bicultural and also bilingual, and also an IBCLC that was bicultural and bilingual. I know that it could be difficult to find everywhere the same, but this had a really interesting and positive outcome. We noticed, for example, that by 20 weeks at the beginning of the pregnancy, at the beginning of the intervention, I should say, when we recruit participants, the intention of breastfeeding was pretty similar between the control group, the one group that didn't receive the intervention, versus the group that received the intervention. They didn't have any intervention at this moment, so it was a little higher, but it was not significant. At the end of the pregnancy, during this time, the intervention group received at least 2 educational modules from the peer counselor, and also 1 visit or phone call from the IDCLC. We noticed that the intervention group had a significant increase in the intention to breastfeed. Intention to breastfeed with high score mean that the mothers are more likely to exclusive breastfeed. Related with self-efficacy, we also follow the mothers at 1 month and 3 months, and we noticed that there was no major difference between the intervention group and control group, and this could be related because the mothers that got this tool or respond this tool were only mothers that were breastfeeding. So mothers that were breastfeeding, even if they were in the control group, they felt pretty secure about what they were doing. We didn't evaluate mothers that were not breastfeeding because obviously they don't want to answer any tool that is related with breastfeeding. However, these are the results. The follow-up of the both group until 6 months. We were able to follow this group after 6 months, and compared with the control group, those in the intervention group were over 3 times more likely to exclusive breastfeed their babies when we consider all 4 postpartum times assessed. So, for example, at the discharge, we noticed that 45% of this group initiate exclusive breastfeeding versus only 21 in the control group. By the end of the study, we continue with almost the same. 41.7% of the group was still exclusive breastfeeding versus only close to 7% of the control group, the one that didn't receive any no intervention. So what are the lessons that we learned is that when we emphasize these mothers and we have this cultural appropriate intervention with people that is able to speak their language, and also they feel identified with the group of peer counselors, are more likely to then get this great result of getting mothers to exclusive breastfeed for 6 months. So as a conclusion, we can say that we have to do a major effort to still improve this rate of exclusive breastfeeding in Hispanic women in the USA. Even that most of the Hispanic women are going to initiate breastfeeding, we know that we need to talk with them and focus in exclusive breastfeeding as a practice that is going to help them with all the health issues related with the Hispanic population. And also we need to talk about how important is the delaying of the introduction of formula and other solid food. So now we're going to have some questions that I would like to do to you, but also if you have any questions, I would be happy to do it. So Miriam, please, could you please now put the question? We're going to ask some questions.
Yeah, so are you going to launch the polls, Miriam? I just wanted to do a little bit of a wrap up as we wait for the polls too. But thank you so much, Dr. Linares, for that. And as you present, it's so stark, the contrast between the US and some of our other countries. And it's so important for us to, as we think about interventions and things in the US, that what we need really is for so many of our Latino communities, no matter what part of the world they come from, to be able to reclaim their own traditions. And that is where the barriers are mostly, that, it's such the systems and structures are so stacked against providing, allowing them, honoring their traditions, and being able to have them do what is culturally appropriate and natural for our Latino population. So thank you for that wonderful presentation. We have a bunch of questions, but before that, we wanted to launch a quick poll for you. We wanted to know that among our attendees here, how many provide direct services to our Hispanic Latinx communities?
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, so when they are ready, I just can.
We're at about 60% for votes. If anybody else wants to answer the question, we'll leave it open for another 10 seconds.
No, I don't have any other question.
I do have some questions here, but we'll do the poll responses. Miriam, can you?
Yes, there we are.
Wonderful. So 83 percent here.
Should we do the next one?
Go for it.
Sure.
About 60% have voted. If anybody else wants to answer the question, we're going to do another 20 seconds.
Okay. For some reason, I cannot see the web, the screen. Let's see.
Are you able to see now, Dr. Linares?
No, I don't know why.
Might be that you're still seeing your own slides. You might want to look at the bottom the control panel and see if you can pull up the GoToWebinar screen.
I'm trying to do that. This is the control. I have the control panel. But I don't know why I can see it.
I'm going to share the results for this one.
Yeah. Can you tell it to me? Can you say it to me? Because I don't know why I cannot see that.
Yeah, so if your organization provides direct services, are translation services available? The results were 90% said yes and 10% said no.
Okay, that's okay. So most of people that is listening is they have the Hispanic population. Okay. What about the other question?
Okay.
Do you want to read the question, Miriam?
Yeah, so this is, does your organization have a workforce that includes bilingual or bicultural providers? If so, mark all that apply. We're at about 50% of voters. We'll give it another 30 seconds.
And considering the time, probably after that we can answer some of the questions that people have already asked.
Yes.
Okay. And the results for this are nurses 47%, physicians
Wow,
3%,
that's great.
social workers 31%, lactation support providers such as peer counselors, CLCs, IBCLCs are 79%, and other office staff are 71%.
Wow, that's really good. I mean, obviously, we want in every unit to have someone that can communicate fluently with this population, but it is great that almost 60% or more of the places are having people that speak the language. Okay, great to know. Do you want to give me some of the questions to see if we can answer?
Sure. So again, resounding support that it's so important to have that community support. The peer-to-peer support is vital, and organizations like Health Connect One, other peer support programs, WAKE, community-based peer support is so important. In terms of home visiting is again important. When we, currently the RNs and lactation consultants do not reflect do not represent the Latino population. And what are some interventions that, for the RN programs to be engaging more Latinos into entering this profession? And, either Cresta or Dr. Linares, please feel free to answer this. It's really increasing our workforce to make it that reflects our population.
Well, that let me see. I mean, if I understand good, one of the things is that we know that right now most of the College of Nursing, they don't have a lot of they don't give a lot of education about breastfeedings in their program. In their curriculum is including probably one class with 2 hours, and that's it. So nurses, they don't know a lot about breastfeeding, and they are. I ran a study also here in the College of Nursing at UK. About 40% of the students, they said, and they feel so afraid to see a mother that is breastfeeding because they don't know how they're going to answer, how they're going to react. The other group feel a little more comfortable, but most of them, they said that they would like to have a specific class that is related with breastfeeding, so nurses can be more prepared in these topics, and specifically knowing all the difference related with the Hispanic population and also other populations and cultural issues related with breastfeeding. So there is some programs that are incorporating like extra classes. They can have a lot like these honor classes or things like that where they can learn about breastfeeding. So that is something that the Lactation Consultant Association, we are working some colleagues that are interested in breastfeeding and are professors at the same time in College of Nursing. We are working so we can introduce in the curriculum a little more about breastfeeding. Now, classes related with when they already are graduate nurses, we don't have many also that are available right now. So still we need to work in things like that, and probably the Hispanic Association of, the National Hispanic Association of Nurses, probably we can start. I just became a member no so much time ago, but one of my goals could be to see if we can work in this topic.
Thank you. You make a really important point about curriculum, both at the undergrad, graduate, continuing education level. In your work in the College of Nursing, are you seeing more students? Like, how do these colleges, are they, doing more outreach or trying to reach, a workforce that reflects our demographics? So do you see more, we really need more nurses and lactation support providers across the spectrum who are Latina. And I wonder, from the nursing program perspective, how is that working?
Well, right now, there is a movement in the College of Nurses throughout the United States, where most of the College of Nurses are working in improving and increasing diversity groups in the undergraduate students. So, for example, here we are working with trying to get a more holistic way to see which candidates that are applying to the College of Nursing are going to be selected. So one of those things is also we are trying to improve the number of Hispanic nurses or other ethnicities. So, for example, the goal of here is have increased from before we said at least we want to have a 3%. Now we want to have a 6%. In the strategic plan of the College of Nursing, we are we have some goals to increase the number of diversity population as a student, because we need it. It's a need, and the American Association of College of Nursing have had a statement right now about the importance of increasing diversity in the College of Nursing, in the students that are getting in the College of Nurses, because we need it. This society, we are not going to be able to continue improving in the health of the population if we don't include representation of all the ethnic groups. It should be the same. I mean, if 18% of the population right now is Hispanic, we should have 18% or close to that of Hispanic nurses. And we know that that is not true. It's about 7%. I'm pretty sure Cresta know a little better. But for what I understand, it's only 7% of nurses are Hispanic.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Cresta, did you have anything to add to that?
Oh, that is certainly consistent with what we see across many educational institutions with whom we partner and work. And some of the work that we've done through the NIH Science and Education Partnership Award Grant has also revealed to us that we need to target Hispanics at a much younger age. So even looking at targeting Hispanics in middle school so that they can take the proper courses to be prepared for nursing education. So a lot of the work that one of our board members and the principal investigator on that project, Dr. Angie Millán, will be doing in the final year of the grant is to increase middle school outreach to, again, build the nursing pipeline.
Terrific. And this is really where those community NAN connections will become so important to see the partners with, in Latino communities, in school districts, and all of that. You're so right, because if you've reached high school and you haven't taken some of the courses, it just restricts how you can get on that track. I see a bunch of questions that are related to acculturation of your research, Dr. Linares, about how you see differences in, immigrant populations and their breastfeeding versus first, second, third generation, and what the effects of acculturation.
Mm-hmm. Well, as I was saying, acculturation had been a study, especially at the beginning, was a study really strong for many researchers. One of the issues with acculturation is that now researchers have noticed that the way that we are measuring acculturation is probably not the most appropriate. So what am I trying to say? Normally, all the tools that are measuring acculturation are related with language, with the use of the English language. So when Hispanics are coming to United States, they probably one of the lessons that they're going to do is to learn the language. However, they love pizza. They love McDonald's. So I'm working right now with another group of researchers because we want to give a new concept of what really is acculturation in the Hispanic population. So Hispanic population, we notice that they may not assimilate or adapt with the language because they continue speaking Spanish. However, they acculturate or they adapt and they assimilate the type of food that Americans are using. So they are adapted and they are acculturated to the type of, they live as American, they eat like American, but they speak Spanish. So when we measure acculturation with those tools, it's not the most appropriate. So, however, based in the knowledge that we have so far with those tools that we believe that are not the most appropriate, we know that acculturation is more related with people than women that are more acculturated. They tend to be less likely to breastfeed their baby because normally they are second generation, third or fourth generation of Hispanics in the US. However, women that are coming from other countries are less acculturated. They are more likely to breastfeed. So that is what we know. There are some controversial, there are some studies recently in 2017, I guess, last year, Dr. Binge, I guess, he did a literature review about acculturation, and he found several studies about 13 studies. He said that this Bigman et al. 2018. I thought that was 2017, I'm sorry. He reported in a systematic review that while about 13 studies suggesting that high acculturated Hispanics were less likely to breastfeed compared with low acculturated, he also found that about 5 studies did not find any significant evidence of such association. By my personal experience, because I work with normally low income and immigrants, acculturation haven't been an issue. Most of the women are really low acculturated because they don't speak the language. So that probably is an issue with how we are measuring acculturation. So we will be, if we are able to probably improve those questionnaires or tools, we were going to be able to learn more about how acculturation is influenced the culture of breastfeeding in Hispanic.
Great, thank you, Dr. Linares. We have a bunch of comments. Some are hospital-based, where Gigi then talks about, how in her hospital they do trainings for nurses. Find that.
Nice.
On the mother-baby friendly first rotate nursing students with the lactation consultants so that they are working together doing that. Nancy Bates says that she has monthly classes for nurses, and she also brings things from other collects and curates resources from the MILF Mob or other articles that she uses. So in the hospital, nurses have up to 5 hours of instruction and orient new nurses in the unit to have at least 8 hours of breastfeeding training. So hospitals are doing that. We see in comments from public health, county, that say the community part is so vital, that Latina women initiate at the highest rate. So having that continuity of support, having home visiting, having peer counselors, having that, that so many having the right support, not just during those 2 days, but beyond as well. So lots of comments about that. I think I have a question for one more question. We'll be posting these and answering some of these in the racial equity learning community, if you're okay with that, Dr. Linares, if we can have some questions. But one talks about early supplementation and how what have you learned in your work with families about working on early supplementation and kind of talking about supplementation at the right times?
Well, in my experience with the last study where we are trying to do this, we implement this intervention. We included a family member if the woman wanted to include it. It was a little kind of difficult to implement intervention where a member of the family of this woman wants to participate. It was not because they didn't want to participate. Is because most of the time they have extended hours of work, so it's difficult for them to participate. So we want to include those family members so they can understand the importance of no supplementation, of no early supplementation. However, in the intervention group, we noticed that some of the mothers, about 10% of the mothers that for different reasons they initiate supplementation. After 2 weeks, all of them went back to exclusive breastfeeding. So because they noticed and the support and the peer counselor gave, and also the IPCLC, the mother was finally empowered that she was producing enough milk, so she didn't need to supplement her baby anymore. So it was a extraordinary and nice experience for us, because we were able to empower those women that they are producing enough milk. But it was a lot alone, probably not so long, but like a everyday almost contact, and I know could be difficult sometimes. But peer counselors can do a great work, and also the IPCLC made great work. Encourage those women that even then they early supplement their babies, they went back to exclusive breastfeeding after a couple of weeks, 2 weeks.
Thank you, Dr. Linares.
Yeah.
Go ahead, please.
So I just want to be sure that I answered the question.
Yeah, thank you. And so important for everyone who works directly with families and mothers. The context is so important when you have to go back to work, when you don't have the support, the things that folks do to compensate for it, understanding that our communities have the wisdom, and if we could, hear from them what some of their barriers are. Most of them do have the solutions as well. We need to create that supportive network of support that allows them to do that. So we do have questions. Julie, yes, you said no dietitian was listed in the list of providers. You are absolutely right. As a dietitian myself, dietitians are
yeah, I noticed that. I'm so sorry. I noticed that. I can see what.
Yes, we did. We had 4 options. The poll allowed us, and we kind of clubbed it into the others. But we understand what a role that the dietitians play. So one of the things that, again, as I want to thank Cresta Archuleta and Ana Maria Linares so much for this terrific session. We do have some questions, and if you're okay with it, Dr. Linares, may we send those to you, and so that we could post it in our blog, in our learning community for some of the questions that have come. Wonderful.
Sure.
Thank you again. This is as we bring special focus to the issues of Hispanic health during this month. Want to let you know that there is a National Latino Leadership Symposium that's going to be happening October in Colorado. Watch out, the Office of Minority Health has promotional graphics, resources as well. A lot of our partner organization, Urban Strategies and 1000 Days on Thursday, is doing a congressional briefing on Latina and maternal and child health, and they'll be releasing a report on that day, on Thursday, at the 2018 State of Latina Maternal and Child Health. So we will be sure to lift that up and promote the report that comes together jointly by the Urban Strategies and 1000 Days. And also USBC will be sharing, highlighting the work that many of our partner organizations have done. NAPLC has done webinars. NAPLC is the National Association of Professional and Peer Lactation Supporters of Color, has done webinars. Other organizations has done. Urban Strategies does work. USBC has an archive of webinars that specifically are focused on Latino health. So we will be pointing you to that as well. And we hope that that when you have resources or things that you are developing, co-creating during this time, or anything useful, please share with us at coalitions@usbreastfeeding.org so we can disseminate that on our learning community and within our partners as well. So again, thank you so much for being with us at this session. Our conversation is going to continue on the racial equity learning community. We'll be floating some questions, some follow-up. And so stay tuned and please complete the evaluation so we know how we did and bring us your suggestions. We do read the evaluations and our topics are bring you speakers and topics that you prioritize for us. So thanks again very much, Presta and Anna, and to you, our participants. And until next time, goodbye.
Goodbye, thank you.